She's perfect. No one suspects an old woman. That was the first thing I heard. My son's voice, confident, smug, floating out from my laptop speakers like poison gas. I froze, didn't move, didn't blink, just stared as the video started. Cash, piles of it, slapped across a motel bed like dirty laundry. Bundles of 20s, 50s, hundreds, stacked high, some already rubber-banded, others still loose. Then came the papers. My name on every single one. Loan applications, tax filings, shell company documents, all under Evelyn Carter. The signature scrawled across each page looked enough like mine to fool anyone who didn't know better. Smooth, steady, not a tremor in sight. But I knew better. Then I heard him again. My mom? She thinks I'm still struggling after the divorce. You should see the pity in her eyes. She's practically begging to help. Everything's in her name. Accounts, paperwork, even the storage unit. If the feds come knocking, guess who goes down first? He laughed, and for the first time in my 72 years, I knew what true betrayal felt like. It wasn't a stab in the back. It was slower, sicker, like drowning in memories that suddenly meant nothing, like hearing your child, your only child, call you the perfect cover in a voice that used to call you Mommy. He had forged my name, laundered money through my accounts, made me the face of his crimes. And all the while he smiled. I paused the video and just sat there. Kitchen lights buzzing above me, coffee cold in my cup, my heart cracking open, breath by breath. That boy I'd raised? Gone. In his place stood a man I didn't know, a man who saw me not as a mother, but as a shield, a prop, a disposable one. My chest tightened. My son wasn't borrowing money. He was laundering it in my name, and if anyone found out, prison bars would be mine, not his. It hit me like a slow-motion car crash, the kind you see coming but can't stop. My hands gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white, breath short. I wasn't just being taken advantage of. I was being positioned. Michael had turned me into the mule. Every loan he'd begged for, every form he'd asked me to sign, just to verify something, every sweet phone call dripping with gratitude and urgency. It was never about help. It was strategy. It was structure. He'd been laying the tracks for this train for years, and I'd helped him hammer in every nail. And now my name was the one on the accounts, my signature on the wires, my history, my trust, my clean reputation, all of it, the perfect camouflage for whatever filth he was moving underneath. Because who would suspect Evelyn Morgan, widowed librarian from Glenridge, barely makes enough to pay her taxes on time, clips grocery coupons, sends birthday checks to her grandkids, certainly not the IRS, not the banks, not the feds, unless someone pointed them in my direction. I stood up too fast and had to grip the counter to steady myself. The kettle was still hissing faintly. I poured the cold tea down the sink. Then I walked to the file drawer under the stairs, the one nobody but me touched, and pulled out 10 years of tax returns, bank statements, my retirement account. Michael's name popped up again and again, each time wrapped in some innocent excuse. It's just easier if it comes through your account. Or, the bank gives better rates to seniors, Mom. They said so. The lies were everywhere, and I'd nodded along like a fool. I pressed my palm flat against my chest. My heart was thudding against it, slow but strong. Not panic. No, this was something sharper. Anger maybe. Or shame. Or both. If the wrong person saw these documents, I'd be explaining them in an interrogation room. And Michael? He'd be right back in some rental, with a new story, a new victim, and that same disarming grin he used to get out of speeding tickets when he was 16. He knew exactly what he was doing, and now so did I. I dumped my bank statements across the table. Dozens of small deposits drained days later. My supposed signature looped across pages I'd never signed. The evidence was sitting right there in my own kitchen, and somehow I'd never really seen it. I laid out the statements like puzzle pieces. 6 months back, 12, 18. Each page whispered what I'd been too tired, too trusting, too proud to catch before. At first glance, it all looked so ordinary. Small deposits, $500 here, $1, $200 there. Random enough to pass as gifts or small refunds. Then, like clockwork, the withdrawals. Full amounts, gone within 2 or 3 days. No explanations, no receipts. Always marked, transfer. Always quiet. I leaned in closer. The handwriting stopped me cold. On 3 separate forms, my name was scrawled across the bottom in blue ink. Not just signed. Forged. My own name, written with the shaky loops of someone trying to imitate my style, but getting it just wrong enough that I could see the difference. A stranger might miss it, but me? I've signed enough permission slips, checks, and birthday cards to know my hand when I see it. This wasn't just sneaky, it was criminal. He hadn't just used me. He'd built a paper trail that pointed directly to me, so if the storm ever hit, I'd be the one left outside without an umbrella. I stared at the loops of the fake signature. It made me feel erased, like someone had taken my name and hollowed it out, filled it with their greed and cowardice, and sent it back out into the world pretending it was still me. It wasn't just betrayal, it was identity theft, in every sense. I reached for my phone again, then stopped. No, not yet. If I confronted him now, he'd just deny it, twist it, maybe even flip the script and make me look unstable. He was good at that, guilt-tripping, rewording things until I doubted myself. No, if I wanted the truth, and more importantly, proof, I had to be smarter. So I kept printing, kept stacking, kept collecting pages, one after another, until my name no longer felt like mine. I remembered the boy who once carried groceries after his father died, whispering, "Don't worry, Mom, I'll take care of you." Now that same boy had used me as cover for his crimes. He was 10 when he said that, maybe 11, the morning after we buried his father. For years, whenever he slipped up, forgot a birthday, missed a holiday, asked for just a little help, I'd remember that boy, the one who loved me, the one who promised, the one who stood on tiptoe to reach the cabinet and poured cereal for both of us the morning after his father died. That boy is gone. And maybe he's been gone for a long time, because the man I raised didn't just betray me, he targeted me. This wasn't the desperate mistake of someone drowning in debt. It was careful, cold, rehearsed. I was blind. When his marriage fell apart, I told myself it wasn't his fault. When he bounced between jobs, I said he was just struggling to find his path. When he stopped visiting as often, I told myself life was just busy. Now I see the pattern. Every call was a transaction. Every visit was a setup. Every "I love you, Mom" had an asterisk beside it. When I casually asked about a strange deposit, Michael chuckled. "Mom, you don't understand finance. Stop worrying." The charm was still there. But now I heard the lie beneath it. I called him that night. I kept my voice light, almost breezy, like I just stumbled on something silly while organizing receipts. "Hey, sweetheart," I said. "Quick question. There was this $1 $700 deposit in my account last month, labeled as MMK Logistics." I laughed softly. "You didn't happen to use my bank again for one of your businesses, did you?" Silence. Just for a second. Then, that chuckle. That Michael chuckle. Smooth as butter. Same one he used to get out of speeding tickets when he was 17. "Mom," he said, drawing it out like I was a nervous toddler. "You don't understand finance. It's just how some of the transfers get labeled. Nothing shady, I promise. Stop worrying." He always did that. Dismiss with charm. When he was caught with beer in high school, it was just one, Mom. When he forgot to send flowers on my birthday, I was going to, but work exploded. When his ex-wife found dating apps on his phone, a prank. Just a dumb prank. The charm used to work on me. Not anymore. Because now I could hear what was underneath it. Contempt. He wasn't comforting me. He was brushing me off, talking down to me like I was senile, like I hadn't worked 2 jobs for a decade to keep food on the table, like I hadn't filed my own taxes every year since 1981, like I hadn't paid for his braces, his soccer uniforms, his first damn car. And now, at 68, I was just the sweet old woman whose ignorance made her the perfect financial decoy. I see, I said. Calm, neutral. He kept talking, kept spinning. These little deposits aren't a big deal. Sometimes I route things through different channels to keep everything legal. You know how taxes are, right? Complicated stuff. I've got it all handled. Right there. That word, legal. He said it like a shield, hoping it would scare me off. I thanked him and ended the call. No drama, no tears. Then I sat back in my chair, staring at the phone. That wasn't a conversation. That was a warning dressed as reassurance. And now I knew exactly what I was dealing with. I brought the papers to Linda Ramirez, a retired banker. She read them, then met my eyes. Evelyn, if investigators find this, you won't just lose your savings. You'll lose your freedom. It took me 3 days to work up the nerve. I packed everything into a plain manila folder. Statements, copies, that blurry screenshot of the video, even the forged signatures I'd circled in red. Then I drove to Linda's house. We'd met through the church years ago. Widows, luncheon, knitting group, all that. But Linda had once been a senior branch manager at First National. 35 years in finance, sharp as a tack, and not easily rattled. She greeted me with chamomile tea and a knowing smile. "You've got that I need someone to tell me I'm not crazy look," she said, leading me into her sunroom. I handed her the folder. She flipped through the first few pages slowly, methodically, then faster. Her fingers tightened around the paper. When she reached the bank form with my signature, the one I never signed, she let out a sound I'd never heard from her before, a quiet, low whistle of disbelief. When she finally looked up, her expression was different. Not polite, not pitying, serious, quietly alarmed. "Evelyn," she said slowly, "this isn't just shady. This is federal." I figured. Money laundering, fraud, false documentation. Whoever's behind this knew what they were doing. They used just enough variation to avoid red flags. Small amounts, staggered dates, but it's structured, intentional. She laid a page flat between us. "This routing pattern," she tapped it, "classic layering, designed to make dirty money look clean before it moves again. And it's under your name." My throat went dry. "So if someone finds this," her voice was gentle but blunt, "you won't just lose your savings, Evelyn. You'll lose your freedom." I sat back hard in the wicker chair. Everything seemed too loud. The ticking clock, the dog barking outside, the creak of my joints as I shifted. "Do you think he knew what he was doing?" I asked. Linda didn't answer right away. Then, "I think your son knew enough to know you wouldn't ask questions, and that's all a person like that needs." We sat in silence for a while. Then I asked the only question that mattered now. "What do I do?" Linda didn't hesitate. "You fight smart. You don't confront him yet. Not until you're protected. You let me help you call the right people." Quietly. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to steady. Not safe, not yet, but steadier. Because I wasn't alone anymore. My hands shook. I saw it clearly. Orange jumpsuit, my neighbors whispering, my grandsons visiting me in prison. All because of my own son. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same thing. Me, sitting behind glass, trying to explain to my grandsons why Grandma was in prison. I imagined the whispers at church, the silence from old friends, the letters that would never come. I'd be the story in town, the sweet old librarian who turned out to be a crook. The shame would swallow me before the cell door even closed. And Michael? He'd keep walking free. Maybe say I lost touch with reality, that I'd always been a little forgetful. The same charm he used on me would work on everyone else too. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was survival. The next morning, I met Linda at her kitchen table again. She already had a plan. "We go to the feds, quietly, not as a victim, as a witness. You bring them something real, something actionable, and you control the story." "What if they don't believe me?" I asked. "They will. she said, holding up a folder. Because I believe you. And I worked in fraud detection for a decade. I've already started cross-referencing account movements. There's enough smoke here to suggest a fire. You give them more, you bait him, and we light the whole thing up. That's when we started crafting the trap. Michael always took the bait if it looked like money and weakness, so we built both into the perfect lie. I would call him sounding unsure, emotional, like a grieving widow who just found a surprise inheritance and didn't know what to do with it. Enough money to tempt him. Enough confusion to make him think I was vulnerable again. Make it believable, Linda said. He knows your patterns, so play to them. That night I sat by the phone, rehearsing lines like an actress before a big scene. I even practiced how my voice should shake. It wasn't hard. The fear was real. Because if this didn't work, if I messed up or pushed too far, too fast, it wouldn't just be my heart breaking. It would be my life. I stared at the folder in front of me. Bank statements, forged forms, printouts of suspicious transfers. A paper trail with my name at the top and my son's fingerprints all over it. He thought he'd buried me under it, but I was going to dig my way out, and I was going to drag him into the light with me. With Linda's guidance, I called Michael. Your father left me more than I need. I want to give you $25,000. My voice shook, but I made it sound like love. He paused, then whispered, You really are an angel, Mom. The line rang 3 times. I almost hung up after the second. Then, Hey, Mom, everything okay? He always opened like that, like he hadn't ignored my last 4 calls, like we just talked yesterday, like I wasn't holding a folder of evidence that could send him away for years. Hi, sweetheart, I said softly, letting the nervousness into my voice. Not the kind that comes from fear, the kind that comes from aging, uncertainty, vulnerability. I paused like I had to gather myself. I've been going through some of your father's old papers. You remember that little life insurance policy we thought had lapsed? I heard him shift. The tone changed, listening closer now. Well, turns out it didn't. It paid out. I let out a nervous little laugh. I wasn't expecting it. And honestly, Michael, it's more than I need. I've got my pension. The house is paid off. I want to help you. Silence. Then, how much are we talking? I flinched. He didn't even fake modesty. I thought maybe $25,000 to help you catch up, clear a few things. No strings, of course. His voice lowered, almost reverent. You really are an angel, Mom. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. He said it like a man accepting communion, like I was some sacred fool handing him the key to my undoing. He kept talking. Wow, seriously, Mom. I knew you'd come through. I was praying for something, and you... He stopped himself. You're saving me. I murmured something motherly. I don't even remember what. My fingers were clenched so tightly around the phone, my knuckles ached. Can we meet? I asked. I want to give it to you in person. Just us. He didn't hesitate. Yeah, sure. Just say where. Downtown? I offered. There's a little cafe near 14th and Grant. Tomorrow at noon? He agreed immediately. Didn't ask why downtown. Didn't question why cash. Because he thought he was still in control. After we hung up, I sat in silence, staring at the phone, hearing his voice replay in my mind. You're saving me. He had no idea. He thought I was handing him a lifeline. But I was handing him a match, and the fuse was already lit. At a cafe, I slid the envelope across the table. Michael pocketed it without a glance. For 1 second, I searched his face for the boy who once hugged me after his first baseball game. All I saw was greed. It was the kind of cafe where nobody asked questions. Cheap coffee, sticky tables, no music. Just background noise and people minding their own business. Exactly what the agents wanted. Exactly what Michael wouldn't notice. I got there early, like Linda instructed. Sat facing the door, envelope already in my purse, hands wrapped around a lukewarm cup I hadn't touched. He arrived 6 minutes late, sunglasses still on indoors, that little strut in his step, The confidence of someone who thinks they've already won. "Hey, Mom," he said, leaning down to kiss my cheek like we were family again. I smiled, soft and shaky. "Thanks for coming." He slid into the booth across from me. Didn't even pretend to ask how I was. His eyes darted to my purse. I took the envelope out slowly. Thick, sealed, real enough to tempt, just like Linda said it needed to be. I slid it across the table, careful not to rush. My fingers brushed the edge of his hand, and I froze. It felt like touching a stranger. He grabbed the envelope and tucked it into his jacket without even opening it. "No, thank you. No, this means the world." Not even a glance inside. Just gone, like it was already his, like I owed him. For a second, I watched him. Really watched. His face still held traces of the boy I raised. Same dimples, same chin, same mole on the left temple. But the eyes, they were colder now, always calculating. And for a moment, just a breath, I wanted to believe that boy was still in there, the one who cried when our dog died, who hugged me in dusty cleats after his first baseball win, saying, "We did it, Mom." But he wasn't. Not anymore. Now he smiled like a shark. "This'll help a lot, you know." I was starting to think you'd written me off. I kept my face soft. "Never, Michael. You're my son." And somehow that hurt more than anything, because it was still true. He leaned back in the booth, relaxed now, already calculating how to ask for more. "You wouldn't believe how bad things got. That little business I told you about? Turns out the partners weren't as reliable as I thought. Partners. Plural." I nodded like I was listening, but really, I was counting. 3 minutes in, one signal away. Outside the window, a man in a denim jacket crossed the street. He glanced at the cafe, touched his earpiece, and kept walking. The noose was starting to tighten. And Michael, he was still talking, still lying, still believing the lie that his mother would never fight back. Michael stood up, like he had someplace more important to be. He flashed me that polished smile, the one he used on realtors and waitresses, and leaned in just enough to say, "You've really helped me out, Mom. You have no idea." Then he patted his jacket, the spot where the envelope now sat, and turned toward the door. That's when I saw him, a man across the street, leaning against a lamppost. Leather jacket, dark jeans, buzzed hair, and eyes that didn't miss a thing. As Michael stepped outside, the man nodded once. No smile, no words, just a nod, like he was confirming something. Michael's steps faltered, and his hand, the one that had pocketed my envelope so confidently, tightened around it. He pulled the jacket closer, pressed it flat to his chest, like it might vanish if he didn't hold it tight enough. I watched from the window, heart in my throat. The leather jacket man didn't follow him, didn't move at all, just turned and strolled the other direction like he'd never been there. But Michael's posture had changed. Gone was the cocky slouch, his shoulders curled in, protective. He glanced over his shoulder twice before disappearing around the corner. He was scared. This was fear. Real fear. I stayed frozen in that booth for a full minute, my tea still untouched. Then I pulled out my phone and texted Linda one word. "Confirmed." She replied instantly. "Agents watching. Next move is yours." I looked down at my hands. Still steady, surprisingly. But inside, my chest burned with something worse than betrayal. This wasn't just fraud. Not just forged signatures or cooked books. Michael had gotten in with someone. Someone's. My son wasn't just lying to me. He was lying to them. And he was using me as a shield. I thought I was fighting to save my retirement, my name, my freedom. But now I understood exactly what Linda had meant when she said we needed to move carefully. Because this wasn't just a family mistake. This was organized crime. Days later, Linda called. The marked bills surfaced. A warehouse in Newark. They seized $300,000. It ties back to Michael. My heart lurched. He was deeper than I imagined. The phone rang at 6:42 a.m. I knew it was Linda before I even picked up. I hadn't been sleeping much. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a knock on the door. Every car passing outside made my stomach twist. But this wasn't a nightmare. This was real. "Evelyn," Linda said, her voice clipped and serious, "it happened early this morning. The bills we marked? They showed up at a warehouse in Newark, one under federal surveillance." I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter. "They raided it?" I asked, voice thin. She exhaled. "Seized over $300,000 in cash, bulk product, multiple IDs. But the money, your envelope, was part of it. Serial numbers match. They're building the chain now. And Michael." She didn't finish. She didn't have to. My knees went weak, but I didn't sit down. I just stared out the window, watching the morning fog roll across my backyard like nothing had changed. But everything had. I thought about that man in the leather jacket, the way Michael's hands shook after that silent nod. I thought about how fast he'd taken the envelope, how casually he'd called me an angel. And now I knew what he'd done with it, tossed it into a river of dirty cash, thinking it would disappear like everything else. Linda's voice brought me back. "The feds are pulling financials now. They'll find the account soon. Once they can show movement from you to him to the warehouse, it's a chain of evidence. And Evelyn," "Yes?" "They're impressed. With you. They said most people in your position panic, back out, or try to protect their kid." She paused. "You didn't." I swallowed hard. I think I stopped being his mother the day he stopped being my son. There was silence on the line, not awkward, just full of everything I wasn't ready to say out loud. My baby, the boy who used to fall asleep on my chest, who called me when he scraped his knee in college, was going to be arrested. And I was the one who helped set it in motion, not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted the truth to stand taller than the lie he built on my back. I didn't light a lamp when the sun went down. I didn't turn on the television or the radio or even the little kitchen clock that always ticked too loud when the house was quiet. I just sat there, in the living room, the folder of evidence closed but still pulsing like a live wire. And on the mantel above me, framed in oak and dusted weekly, was Thomas. My thumb rubbed across his face like it might wake him up, might bring him back long enough to explain how we got here. "I don't understand," I whispered. My voice cracked, small like it used to get when we argued about bills or discipline. We gave him everything. We loved him. We worked for him. We did the hard parts. No answer, of course. Just that quiet smile behind the glass. "He used me, Tom. He used me." The tears came fast, and I didn't try to stop them. I let them fall, hot and furious, over my cheeks, down my neck, landing on the glass, like they belonged there. I cried the way I hadn't allowed myself to in years, not after Michael's divorce, not even at Thomas's funeral. This was different. This was grief with no casket. Because the boy we raised, he was gone. And in his place was a man who had looked me in the eye, taken my love, and fed it to wolves. I pressed the frame to my chest. "I used to think I'd failed him," I said softly, "that maybe if I'd been stricter, or smarter, or richer." I shook my head, wiping my face. "But that's not it, is it? He chose this. He chose greed over family, lies over love. He chose to see me not as a mother, but as leverage." Thomas's face blurred behind the tears, and I hated that. Hated that this was how grief always showed up in the end, with silence and shame and no answers. But under it all, something else was still burning. Not rage, not justice. Resolve. Because the collapse was over, and now I was going to finish what I started. Michael stormed to my house, sweat on his forehead. "You've been asking questions. You didn't talk to anyone, right?" His hand squeezed my shoulder. For the first time, I felt fear of my own child. He didn't knock, just threw the front door open like he used to when he was 16, skipping curfew and grinning like trouble was something to be proud of. But there was no grin this time, no charm, just sweat on his brow, panic behind his eyes, and a tension in his body I hadn't seen since the divorce. He was scared, and I knew exactly why. I was washing dishes the old way, by hand, in the sink, humming to myself like nothing was wrong. I didn't turn when I heard him, just kept scrubbing the same plate over and over. "Mom," he said sharply, "we need to talk." I dried my hands. Slowly, gave myself a second to settle the trembling that had started in my legs. When I turned, he was already pacing. "You've been asking questions," he snapped. "Linda Ramirez stopped by my office. Just for coffee, supposedly. She never just pops in. And now Mark from the credit union says someone's been inquiring about backdated authorizations." He stopped pacing and turned to face me. "You didn't talk to anyone, right?" His voice had changed. Lower, harder. I forced a frown. "Michael, what are you talking about?" He stepped closer. Too close. "Don't play dumb," he growled. "You're not good at it." Then his hand landed on my shoulder. Not a hug, not affection, pressure, a grip. Too tight. I froze. I've been a lot of things in my life. Broke, tired, lonely. But I had never, not once, felt unsafe in my own kitchen. Until now. "Michael," I said calmly, meeting his eyes. "You're hurting me," he blinked. Just once. Then his hand dropped. He looked away like he couldn't stand what he'd just done. Or worse, like he didn't even realize it. "I'm just under a lot of pressure," he mumbled. "From who?" I asked. His eyes flicked up to mine. There it was again. The flicker of panic. "I need to know I can trust you," he said. The irony nearly choked me. I gave him a mother's smile. Soft. Tired. "You can always trust me, sweetheart." He stared at me for a moment. Searching. Waiting for something. Panic. Guilt. A confession. I gave him none of it. When he finally turned and walked out, I stayed by the sink until the sound of his car disappeared down the street. My legs were trembling. Not from fear, from decision. This was it. I picked up my phone, thumb hovering over the screen for just a second. Then I typed, "Let's set the final meeting. I'm ready." The next morning, I sat across from a plainclothes investigator in Linda's kitchen while her spaniel snored under the table. We went over the plan 3 times. The plainclothes agent looked at me, voice calm but firm. "This is your choice, Evelyn," he said. "Once he's in that park, and once you hand him the second envelope, we move. We need him red-handed again." I nodded. I typed the message slowly, word by word, making sure it sounded like me. The version of me Michael still believed in. "Can we meet at Riverside Park? Just us. I want to talk. No more confusion." I stared at the screen before hitting send. Not a word of it was false. I did want to talk. I was done with confusion. His reply came in under 60 seconds. "Of course. See you there." The next day I dressed carefully. Slacks. The pale blue sweater Michael once told me made me look soft and safe. I let my hands shake, just enough to sell the part. I didn't need to act vulnerable. I was vulnerable. But I wasn't powerless. Not anymore. I arrived early, as instructed. Sat on the same weathered bench where Thomas used to read the newspaper, while Michael chased squirrels in the grass. Funny how betrayal can bring you right back to the places where love used to live. At 3:06 p.m., Michael appeared. He walked toward me, alone, wearing sunglasses and that same practiced smirk he always wore when he thought he was in control. "You look tired," he said, sitting beside me. I smiled softly. "It's been a long week." He reached for the envelope in my hands. I didn't pull it back. I let him take it. Because what he didn't know, the moment he touched that envelope, he touched the end. Michael didn't look at me right away. He just stared ahead at the walking path, like expecting someone, anyone, to come for him. "My partners think there's a rat," he said, voice low. "They're panicking. Phones are burning. Accounts frozen." He finally turned to me. There was sweat on his temple. His lips were dry. His voice cracked. "Tell me it wasn't you, Mom. Please." I let the silence stretch. Not to punish him, not to be cruel, but because I needed to see something. Anything. Remorse, regret, shame. But there was none. Just fear. Raw, selfish fear. I studied his face like it was the first time I'd ever really seen it. Not the face of my baby boy. Not the man he pretended to be. But what he actually was. He wasn't here to ask for forgiveness. He was here to escape blame. And suddenly, it hit me. This wasn't the first time he'd turned to me as his shield. It was just the first time I refused to lift it. I spoke softly, evenly. You know, Michael, I used to think I'd failed you, that maybe your father and I didn't raise you right, that maybe we were too soft. He stiffened, said nothing. But I see it now, I continued. You're not lost. You're not confused. You're careful, calculated, and you've always known exactly what you were doing. His mouth opened, like he was about to deny it, but no words came. Just that look, cornered, cracked, caught. I would have given you everything, I whispered, but you took it anyway, and you used my love like it was currency to spend. His hands were shaking. From anger or fear, it didn't matter, because the choice he wanted me to make, protect him again, lie for him, cover one more crime, it wasn't mine to make anymore. It never had been. And then he realized I knew everything. His hand closed around my wrist. Sudden, tight, almost trembling. Not like before, not in anger. This was something different. Desperation, panic. Mom, he whispered, please, don't do this. I didn't pull away. He leaned in, eyes searching my face like he could find an escape route in my expression. You're all I have left, he said. You don't understand what they'll do. You don't know what I got dragged into. I was trying to fix it. His voice cracked, his eyes glassed over. I never meant to hurt you. I swear to God, Mom, you raised me. You loved me. Don't turn your back on me now, please. I felt the warmth of his hand on my skin, the way it used to be when he was little and reached for me during thunderstorms, scared of the lightning. For one flicker of a second, just one, I saw him again, the boy, the child I read stories to, the child who tucked into my side and said I made him feel safe. And for that 1 second, my chest ached. The mother in me wanted to believe it, wanted to forgive, wanted to pretend it had all been a mistake. But the woman I had become, the one who read bank statements at midnight, who carried a recording device into a park, who buried her tears beneath resolve, knew better. I looked at him, steady and quiet. I know everything, Michael. His grip faltered. I felt the twitch of panic in his fingers. I know about the accounts, the forged signatures, the warehouse in Newark, the marked bills. I know who you are now. His eyes widened, his breath caught in his throat. You called them, he whispered. You brought them here. I said nothing, because the truth was already all around us. He just hadn't heard it yet. And then, sirens, faint at first, like the hum of a coming storm, then louder, splitting the air with high, sharp finality. Michael's head snapped toward the sound. No, 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 he muttered, standing too fast. People were turning to look. A dog barked. 2 plainclothes officers emerged from behind the tree line, badges drawn. Michael backed up like a cornered animal, eyes wild. He looked at me one last time, face crumbling. Please, Mom, help me. I stood slowly, calmly. I just did, I said. It happened fast. 1 second Michael was standing, eyes darting, voice cracking with fear. The next, the grass rippled with movement. Plainclothes officers converging from every angle, their voices sharp, their hands steady. Michael stumbled backward. Wait! No! This is a mistake, he shouted, his voice carrying across the open park. Mom! His voice cracked like glass. Please! Don't let them take me. Do something. You're my mother. I didn't move. I just stood there, arms crossed tight against my chest, the autumn wind cutting across my face. Because what could I do? What had I already done, except save him from destroying me, and himself, in the long run? Around us, the world didn't pause. It leaned in. Phones came up, lenses glinting, people whispering, pointing. A man muttered, fraud case. A woman said, I knew I'd seen him in the news. Mom! His voice cracked again, raw and desperate. Please! Tell them it's not true. Tell them you made a mistake." 2 officers hauled him upright. He twisted in their grip, head snapping toward me, his eyes locked on mine. And for a heartbeat, the park went quiet inside my head. No sirens, no shouts, no phones. Just his voice, pleading. The officers pulled him toward the waiting car. The crowd parted, buzzing with curiosity and pity and hunger. My son, my only child, had just become public property. His downfall wasn't just mine to witness anymore. It belonged to the world. And in that moment, I understood something I hadn't before. Sometimes justice doesn't arrive quietly. Sometimes it arrives loud, messy, humiliating. And sometimes that's the only way it sticks. The arrest was only the beginning. By the end of the week, the headlines had names. His name. Local entrepreneur accused in federal laundering scheme. Authorities seize $1.2 million in cash, property linked to Michael Brandt. Co-conspirators cut deals in exchange for testimony. One by one, the people he'd once called partners, the ones who toasted him over steak dinners, who called him a genius, who let him use my bank accounts to keep their operation clean, turned on him. Deals were struck, immunity traded, testimonies gathered like storm clouds. I read every article, not because I needed the confirmation. I already knew what he was. But I needed to see the world learn it too. His name, once mentioned at city meetings, community fundraisers, golf tournaments, now curdled on people's tongues. Bankers deleted his number. Old friends distanced themselves. Even his ex-wife blocked visitation requests. There was no more charm to save him now. One of the investigators called to update me. She sounded almost impressed. "You gave us the thread," she said. "We unraveled the whole damn quilt." I thanked her. Then I hung up and walked to the porch, wrapped myself in my cardigan, and watched the neighborhood pass by. It had been years since anyone asked about my son with pride in their voice. But now, if they mentioned him at all, it was in whispers. That was her boy. Shame. He had promise. How could she not have known? But I had known. Too late, maybe, but not never. And that's what mattered now. I didn't visit the courthouse. I didn't watch the arraignment. I didn't write a statement. There was nothing left to say. I'd already said the most important words when I handed him that envelope, when I stood silent as they cuffed him, when I chose the truth over the lie he'd written in my name. Now it was the world's turn to decide what to do with him. And me? I went home, fed the cat, paid my bills, ate dinner alone in the kitchen he once tore through as a teenager with bottomless hunger. My life didn't explode. It just kept moving, quieter, cleaner, honest. That was enough. Thank you for listening to the end. If you enjoyed the story, please share it with someone who'd appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel.